It never gets discussed because it's not as edgy as thinking like, oh yeah, it's all about money, it's all about beauty, it's all about this, it's about the Lamborghini. It's like, no, like how is he going to treat you? And so there's also something very special to people about the other person who is very desired by a lot of people, treating them particularly nicely. Right? Like, I mean, you hear this notion of being picked. Right? Yeah. And there's mutual picking, and everything is changing now too, right? I mean, the way that you know, there are apps like Bumble where women actually have to say that it's, yes, I will talk to you, right? Yeah. It's not a bidirectional conversation. There's an asymmetric conversation. Yeah.
In terms of physical appearance, a good shoulder to hip ratio, so relatively wide shoulders relative to hips, is one. Women tend to prefer men who are physically fit and well toned, but not muscle bound. So like if you go to, I don't know, someone like those early, when Arnold Schwarzenegger was doing the Mr. whatever it was contest, you see the women don't find those attractive, the extremely muscle-bound guys, but they like a guy who's physically fit, high shoulder to hip ratio. They like guys who are physically taller than they are, and guys who are a bit above average. I think that women might interpret a guy who is so obsessed with his body that they might view that as a sign of narcissism.
Yes.
And that's not a good trait.
Most large-scale study that's been done on this is a study that I did a while back of 37 different cultures, and it's now been replicated by other researchers. But basically what we found is 3 clusters of things. We found qualities that both men and women wanted in a long-term mate. We found some qualities that were sex differentiated, where women preferred them more than men or men preferred them more than women. And then we found some attributes that were highly variable across cultures in whether people found these as desirable or indispensable or irrelevant. So if you talk about universal desires, the things that men and women share, there are things like intelligence, kindness, mutual attraction and love, which is really kind of heartwarming because some people think that love is a recent Western invention by some European poets, but it turns out it's not true. You go to the Kung San in Botswana, and they describe pretty much the same experiences of falling in love as we do, and even describe the distinction between this kind of infatuation stage of love and the attachment phase where, you know, you can't maintain this frenzy of infatuation and obsession for very long, 6 weeks, maybe 6 months at most. Otherwise, you can get nothing else done in your life. And
those are those dopamine circuits firing at high frequency.
Yes. So mutual attraction, love, good health, dependability, emotional stability, although there's a bit of a sex difference there with women preferring it a bit more than men. So you go to the Zulu tribe in South Africa or Rio de Janeiro in Brazil or Portugal or Oslo or anywhere in the world, and these are qualities that people universally desire in long-term mates. Physical appearance for women is important in long-term mating, not as important as it is for men, but it becomes more important in short-term mating. And so is the guy good-looking? So those physical attributes are more important for women. They remain important for men, physical appearance, in short-term mating, but with the footnote that men are willing to drop their standards in short-term mating if it's low commitment, low risk, just sex, without entangling commitments. Women are more likely to prioritize what I call bad boy qualities. So guys who are very self-confident, guys who are strut, guys who are a little arrogant, guys who are risk-taking, guys who defy conventions. women are more attracted to those guys in short-term mating than long-term mating. And whereas in long-term mating, they go more for the good dad qualities. Is this guy dependable? Is he going to be a good father to my children? And then also in short-term mating, women use that mate copying heuristic. That is, if there are thousands of other women who find him attractive, women find him attractive. And so that's why you have the groupie phenomenon. So with rock stars, for example, there are thousands of screaming women, all of whom want to sleep with this famous rock star. And they use that as information. They find if you took like a still photo of some of these rock stars and asked women how attractive the guy is versus tell him he's a famous rock star and showed the thousands of women screaming at him, they judge him entirely differently in terms of his attractiveness. Or even, and this is an important point, that women's attraction to men is more context specific and varies more across contexts than men's attraction to women. And so I'll give you just an example of that. This is a female colleague of mine went to a conference, an academic conference, and she found the organizer of this conference to be really attractive and then saw him 6 months later and wondered, well, what was I thinking? He doesn't seem very attractive at all. And what it was is when he was the organizer, he was at the center of the attention structure. You know, he was the guy up on stage directing everybody and everyone was attending to him. And then when he was just a normal presenter at a conference, he didn't command the attention structure like he did when he was the organizer. And so this is just an illustration of how circumstance dependent women's mate attraction is for guys. It depends on, you know, his status, the number of women that are attracted to him, the attention structure, is how he interacts with a puppy or a baby, if he's ignoring a baby in distress or positively interacting with a young child. All these things, whereas for men, it almost doesn't matter. You know, context is more irrelevant. They're honing in on the specific psychophysical cues that the woman is displaying, and context be damned.
Ultimately, I mean, right, there's the dopamine phase of a relationship, and then there's the serotonin phase, the kind of more mutuality, coziness, and sweetness. There's a great book about how to make sure that the dopamine component and the serotonin component, so to speak, go on forever. And it has to do with, you know, when you first meet someone and you're attracted to them, you're essentially objectifying them. Meaning, not in the way people might think, you are not dependent on them for emotional stability or survival. As you get close with somebody, you really come to depend on them, and then you tend to objectify them less. And so this book, the name is kind of corny, but it's written by an analyst again. It's called Can Love Last? And it's a book about how really good, strong relationships are the consequence of people constantly moving through this dependency objectification dynamic. And I use those words in the true, in the psychological sense, not in the way they're typically thrown around nowadays. So the idea, you know, in some cultures, men and women will only touch for 2 weeks out of the month. And then for the other 2 weeks, the excitement and the sensuality and the sexuality is very heightened. And then they go back to this kind of distancing. Now, I don't think that's feasible for most people, but if you look statistically, those relationships tend to last a very long time with at least reported mutual feelings of intense attraction for many, many, many decades. So human beings need to learn how to at least understand and control these dynamics.